much,
Oh
Debbie.
gosh,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Thanks so much. Hello, my name is Patricia Nill, and I am grateful to be here today. Thank you for allowing me to share some time with you. We're going on a journey together today, really the journey of my career, in fact, as told in 3 stories of growth. You're welcome to have your camera on, but don't feel obligated. So, with that, grab a snack if you don't already have one, and we can all take a collective deep breath as we settle in together. Imagine with me. It's early May, and you're a second grade teacher coming up on the end of the school year. Your school president is standing in your classroom at the end of the day. You're a few feet away from him, having just been told that you're going to have to move down a grade level again to first grade so you can, quote, learn how to be more strict from your partner teacher. Your heart rate increases to match your racing thoughts. What? You don't want to teach first grade. You barely wanted to teach second grade, but you did it because you love teaching and you didn't want to be out of a job. You do not want to learn from that other teacher because you don't agree with how she treats her students. You manage a whisper in reply, I don't think I'm comfortable with that. Instead of seeing your school president pause and hearing him ask why, he opens the door, turns his head back to you, and says, as he's walking out, well, at least you'd still be employed. How did I get here? Toward the end of my 4th year of teaching, I was defeated. I hit my tipping point. Most of that year, I dealt with 2 of my students' families feuding, each claiming their child was either bullied or denying that their child did the bullying, and I became stuck in the middle, even being accused of lying by both the parents and my administrators about what I may or may not have witnessed. Consequently, admin started sitting in my classroom daily, interrogating me about what went on in my classroom, even insinuating that I may have provoked the alleged bullying by how I arranged the desks in my classroom. Admin's solution was to strip me of my teaching autonomy and the classroom rules we'd had in place all year, dictating how I could conduct or not conduct my own classroom. I was on edge, feeling suffocated, and feeling like I was a complete failure at the job I had dreamt of since I was a little girl. I'd wanted to teach since I was in elementary school. I grew up in a family of educators, and I could think of no better career. I used to even role play in our kitchen using my mom's old grade books and pretend like I was teaching my class from the kitchen counter, and they were all sitting at around our kitchen table. In my first years of teaching, I was so deeply in love with my students, but I was surrounded by so many others with far more experience. I was intimidated by that experience, feeling inadequate, and then became vulnerable to their influence. I wanted to be a great teacher and be seen as a great employee. But in being vulnerable to others' influence, whether fellow teachers, administrators, or parents, I stifled my self-confidence as a newbie and simply didn't know how to stand up for myself or defend my decisions, nor did I really feel like I could. Consequently, I became small. I downplayed or dismissed my knowledge and skills. Rather than sticking up for what I believed was the best way to teach or problem solve, I allowed others to direct my actions. During my 3rd year of teaching, even, I found myself daydreaming what else I could be doing besides teaching in the classroom. By my 4th and final year of teaching, I faced the reality that teaching would not be my forever career. I became a career changer, which is something I never thought I would say. What did it look like to be a career changer? Well, I mentioned my daydreaming of other roles or careers while in my 3rd year of teaching. Not realizing it at the time, this was the start of forming a longer term plan. And as mentioned, one that did not include teaching. After allowing myself a pity party and very tearful phone calls with my parents, I was resolved to leave teaching and find something different that better aligned with my strengths, goals, and frankly, my well being. But what does one do with a teaching degree if you're not going to teach? Well, I had to start looking at my teaching skills in a different light and figure out how they could be transferable to a different career. While figuring that out, I came across this new to me field called user experience design, an entire industry built upon making people's day-to-day lives better in big and small ways. Yes, please. It was a great aha moment that immediately felt like a good fit. And so I applied for a master's program and started courses in the fall of 2016. What did I learn and what do I continue to learn from being a career changer? Well, I certainly learned that skills from this one industry absolutely transferred to other industries and were needed in those other industries. I was given the opportunity to reassess and relearn the skills I had and those I wanted to acquire. In reading articles about career changes, I learned which of my skills were transferable, primarily those soft skills like time management, people management, prioritizing multiple projects, delivering within stressful timeframes, etc. And I learned enough business jargon to be able to talk about those skills in ways that resonated with hiring managers and those with whom I networked. In doing these reassessments and understanding that my skills were larger than quote unquote just a teacher or substitute teacher for whatever this main thing is that you may be doing right now, I regained my confidence. I was capable of different things. I was valuable. My skills were valuable, and my job did not define who I was. I also learned that sometimes work is simply work. If you need a paycheck, you do what you need to do at times to ensure you have a paycheck. In between the time of deciding to leave teaching and starting my first full-time UX design role, I had interim jobs. They were not related to my career aspirations, but I made sure to have the financial means to take care of myself while I figured out my next steps toward those career aspirations. And I also learned that I do not have the personality to work in retail. So special shout out to any of y'all who may work in retail or any service industry profession, because you deserve to make a lot more than you do for putting up with customers. Ultimately, though, even though teaching was what I'd wanted for so long, I learned I was resourceful, resilient, and strong enough to walk away and start over elsewhere. Starting over is exactly what I did. Imagine now, a few years have passed. You are in your new career path and are an energetic junior user experience researcher. You're sitting across from your manager in his office in a routine one-on-one meeting. He squares his shoulders to you, sits up straighter, and leans toward you across the desk. He states sharply, "I'm your manager. I don't need to give you a reason why I want to attend a meeting. You need to learn when to not ask questions." My heart's racing just a little bit, remembering that. Are your palms a little sweaty? Do you feel like you need to physically scoot back a little bit to create more space between you and this manager? Well, those were my natural reactions in this situation. And how did I wind up there, you ask? Well, in that specific scenario, I merely dared to ask a question. As mentioned, it was a regular one-on-one. He asked me about a meeting he saw on my calendar that he wasn't invited to, but it was a meeting I didn't create, so I didn't have much information about it. After his second demand that I invite him to the meeting, and after my two polite but firm refusals to do so, since I wasn't the meeting organizer, I asked why he wanted to be invited. That set him off just a little bit. After leaving teaching, I started my interim full-time job and started my master's in user experience design. I quietly made my entrance in the UX design field through a couple of internships, leading to my first full-time UX design role. In that role, I discovered my new passion of user research. I earned my shiny official title of UX researcher in May of 2018. I was so excited for this new journey and felt filled with so much promise. This user research role started innocently enough with my newly formed UX research team of 3. We hit the ground running with work, but disappointingly, red flags started emerging with my manager. As with most red flags, they were not apparent until they were all waving millimeters from my face, unable to be ignored. It didn't take long to recognize my manager enjoyed the power of his title in big ways and small. He gave preferential treatment to my teammates who were quote unquote yes people and never questioned his ideas or dared to ask questions. He made sure you knew he had sole power to distribute pay increases each year. He would say things like, I just don't feel like you performed as well as your teammates. He did not like you talking to other departments without him present. There was one afternoon I was returning to my desk from a meeting. He caught me in the hallway and cornered me with his fist curled in outrage. And he was standing there looking over me as a taller guy, so it was pretty intimidating. So fist curled, staring down at me, snarling these questions. Why wasn't I invited to this meeting? Why were you there without me? I should have been invited. Feeling cornered, literally and figuratively, took me back to being in my classroom again, being told I would be moving down a grade despite my not wanting to. I wasn't going to have it. I was not going to allow this a second time. So, what did I do next? Well, since my manager made it clear that I was not going to thrive in his environment, and gratefully, thanks to my experience while teaching, I quickly knew a toxic environment when I saw one. Was this job, this situation worth defending? No. Did I deserve better? Yes. As long as he remains my manager, there would be no changes to my work situation unless I made the changes. This time around, I was mentally stronger, braver, and had a deeper understanding of my strength and what I deserved from an employer. I did not want to leave research, but I did need to gain clarity on what role I did want next. So, what did I learn from all of this? Well, first and foremost, I learned how not to be a manager or a leader. I learned I do not respond well to being micromanaged. And this was my tipping point with teaching, and it was my tipping point here. Healthy managers do not lead by controlling every detail of every situation, nor do they put others down for their own insecurities. They actually welcome and surround themselves with people with different skill sets. I learned that I did not want to make others feel this way, whether I was their mentor, teammate, or maybe someday down the road, their manager. So I learned more about workplace bullying, dealing with difficult personalities, and genuine leadership. I also learned in what kind of environment I would need to thrive. I learned my nature is to ask questions. It's who I am as a person. It's who I am as a professional. I mean, hello, the job of a UX researcher is literally to ask questions. So I diligently sought an environment for my next role where that trait would be welcome. These two lessons really shaped the types of questions I'd ask during job interviews. I wanted to suss out my potential manager's managerial style and how the team reacts to me asking a gazillion questions and asking those hard questions. The company where I am now, one of their core values on their website at the time of my interviewing literally said, we ask the hard questions. I was like, oh, that's a good sign. This is maybe a place where I want to be. I learned how to neutrally frame my current work situation during job interviews. Even though I was in a crummy situation, I did not want that stress and that anger to come through when I was interviewing. I didn't want my current situation to define who I was as an employee. And finally, one of the life lessons I am most proud of was finding a way to not burn bridges when I left. That would have been the easier route. Not many would have blamed me, I am sure, if I had left in a huff and with an indignant attitude. But that would have been a reflection of the situation in that moment, not a reflection of who I was outside of the situation. Instead, I took the time to schedule short meetings with colleagues and other managers I respected and enjoyed to graciously say, see you later. And I'm so glad that I did, because those are a lot of the same colleagues that I still keep up with and continue to check in with from time to time. Ultimately, the situation allowed me to learn how I did not want to lead others and further reinforce that I cannot work for those that try to control me. So let's fast forward now to the point in my journey where I left that role and that manager behind, And now I'm a senior user researcher at a different company. So for a final time today, we'll step into that third scenario. You're leading a meeting with your internal project team to share your initial research plan for some generative user interviews based on a client identified problem area. It's one the client and your team is excited to learn more about, since it will provide overall insights as to how and why certain loyalty members use this restaurant app. You share your screen with the team's Miro board and briefly provide background context around why we're meeting, client goals, how the generative research plays into those goals. And almost mid-sentence, your product manager cuts you off and sternly says, I don't understand why we're doing this. This research isn't going to give me what I need. You fight the urge to immediately yell back at him that if he maybe attended the last two meetings leading up to this one, then he'd understand more. But being the professional that you are, you manage to keep your cool and pointedly share a few more details of the last two meetings your product manager missed, and you review specific reasons for doing this round of research. Not even a few minutes later, that product manager abruptly exits the meeting with a message in the chat saying, looks like y'all don't need me for this, I'm gonna hop. So how did I wind up here? Well, I'd actually worked on a previous project with this same product manager, and in that time picked up on subtle cues that he felt research wasn't important to him. For example, he never asked me questions directly about users or what research found. He always found a way to ask my UX designer these types of questions. Gratefully, my designer was seasoned and savvy and knew how to redirect him to me with those types of questions, but it was aggravating. He also had a habit of not attending the research-related team meetings. Now, I could understand some of that. Our agency had been going through rounds and rounds of layoffs, and we were all stretched thin, over allocated on projects, and time was precious. I felt this too. For this reason, I created the habit of providing a few context setting bullet points at the beginning of every meeting I ran to give each other some grace and bring us all up to speed on the latest and greatest. He also, however, never referenced back to any research conducted when speaking with the client, not even when the product or design decisions he was discussing tied directly back to the research insights found. So there was some disrespect felt during this project, and it wasn't that I personally felt ignored, although there was a little bit of that, but it was more the fact that he seems to deliberately look over research playing any part in the product roadmap decisions we were making with the client. Despite all of this, I tried to be optimistic with team dynamics going into this new project. My optimism waned shortly after this project began, as I still found myself butting heads with this product manager. On this project, he was even more inconsistent about attending meetings, and not just research meetings this time. And when he did attend meetings, he would create upheaval by forcing us to go back over plans everyone, including him, had already reviewed and approved. Again, it's worth noting, he was included in all of this communication for decision making. He would be in agreement one day, but the next he would come to another meeting, change his mind by questioning those decisions, ask things like, well, what if we did it this way? Or what if we did X, Y, and Z instead? And then inevitably, he would leave the meeting early with this now seemingly unresolved issue for the rest of us to try to figure out, all while being left wondering if he was just going to change his mind tomorrow. It was frustrating. Not only did it waste our team's time, but it wasted our clients' resources. And that's where I drew the line. That's where it was not okay. Changes needed to be made. And gratefully, I was not the only one who recognized this, so I did have some support from my fellow teammates. So it wasn't just me having to go about it this time. So what did I do next? Well, I took aggressive notes and left detailed documentation on every idea, decision, question, and approved plan, like obnoxiously so, in our team's Miro board and through Slack, leaving questions for the greater team or comments for the greater team, but also direct messaging him with all of these too. I'm an over communicator by nature, but in this situation, I wanted it to be abundantly clear what I was doing, how I was doing it, and why, so that he could have no room to claim he didn't understand why we were doing something or the value that came with it. The rest of the team also realigned on our operating procedures. If everyone was in agreement with a plan for moving forward, we went ahead with it, whether or not this product manager was in that meeting. Now, again, we would also communicate all of these next steps with him afterward if he wasn't there, so we weren't totally leaving him out. So we made these changes that were within our control. But what I could not control was his inability to recognize that exploratory user research does have a direct impact on the usability of a product. For that matter, I simply ensured the rest of the team and the client understood what I was doing and the value it had, and I went about my business of user research. As a quick footnote, I actually recently received my annual performance review, and I remember that obnoxious note-taking I did to keep my product manager in check. Well, it turns out that a few of my other teammates actually really appreciated that level of detail and transparency around knowing what I was doing and seeing a trail of my work. So, who knows, maybe that type of documentation will come back into play for future projects. But working with this product manager was a stark reminder that despite the field of user research being around for basically as long as the internet has existed, there are still those that do not understand and therefore cannot appreciate what we do. That being said, what did I learn from these encounters? I learned when dealing with difficult product managers or any difficult teammate really, it's important to remember that it's rarely anything personal about you. When I first encountered this product manager, I was personally offended that he didn't automatically turn to me with every question around user behavior, or when he wouldn't reference the work that I did for the project, or when he wouldn't attend my meetings. But I am not the point. The work is, our shared project goal is. So he never gave me a shout out in our client calls. Boo-hoo. Did the research findings ultimately end up making their way into the design and product decisions? Yes, that was what really mattered. That was the reason for doing the research. Please hear me when I say, if this situation had occurred in my first or second or heck, even third year as a user researcher, I would have continued this woe is me, I'm not important thinking, just as I have when I was a new teacher. Gratefully, I have matured a little bit in my life experiences and in my craft. So instead of remaining in that insecure, vulnerable state, I have learned to catch myself in those moments and take a step back from the work to reframe my thinking around the situation. In doing so, I can more clearly assess the type of colleague I'm dealing with or manager. Are they difficult because they just got rear-ended before coming into this meeting? Are they difficult because they think they're being clever and trying to get me to behave a certain way? Are they being difficult because they're simply difficult all the time? Understanding their type of difficult allows me to know how to approach my collaboration with them. If they just got rear-ended, perhaps I reschedule the meeting out of compassion for their unforeseen stressor. If they think they're being clever, maybe I call them out on that strategy to let them know it won't work on me. If they're simply difficult all the time, well, what leverage can I find to balance that power? In dealing with this product manager, ultimately, I grew in my confidence and gained more ways to collaborate with teammates, primarily in how I bring others into my research process, how I can more quickly identify the types of teammates I have, and how to more quickly pivot my approaches to collaboration to achieve our shared goals. So let's bring our time to a close here. Throughout my career journey, I have unexpectedly encountered difficult colleagues, from managers to teammates. Those encounters, while challenging and sometimes bleak in the moment, led to unexpected growth. Growth that has shaped who I am today, the work I am doing today, and how I aim to move forward. While I was able to share these stories today as neat, linear, and full of silver linings, they were hard to live through while they were playing out. But I made it through, and I am standing here today able to share those learnings with you. I am resilient, and I believe that you are resilient too. My hope with sharing these stories is that you're able to hear the words you need to hear and have the tools you need to have to make it through your difficult moments as well. Lastly, here are a few books I have read and learned from throughout my career and still a reference today. They have post-its galore with notes galore throughout. There are also a few other resources listed here that have been shared with me along the way. I will happily share this resource slide afterwards, so don't feel like you have to furiously scribble names or titles. But please know that knowledge is power. And so take the time to really learn more deeply about these areas, just as I continue to do. And that helps me continue to reframe my thinking and learnings. So with that, here is where I get to say thank you for your time and for allowing me to share some of my stories. It has been a pleasure sharing this time together. With that, Debbie, that brings me to a close with my official presentation. I believe we have time for questions if there are any.
Yeah, thanks. I'll stop the recording and we can certainly see if there are